Yes, my name is Simon. I am a strategic tech account manager here at Jamf. So I've helped many of you in the past, either in my older role, I've been here for 4 years, so either as a technical account manager or now as a STAM. So what am I going to kind of cover today? So long-term certificate management, mostly just kind of a general overview of push certificates. You know, what is a push certificate? Demonstrate how to create it, the renewal process, what is an SSL certificate, what should I use, Jamf Pro built-in certificate or third party, and then kind of demonstrate generating an SSL cert and deploying internal certificates via policy or configuration profile. Why do we need a push certificate? The push certificate is needed for our AP&S communication for our Mac OS computers and our iOS computers. It helps for us to send configuration profiles to both our Mac OS and iOS, and for remote commands like wiping, lock device, and so on and so forth. It also for our Mac OS devices to distribute Mac App Store apps to computers, and for being able to enroll and manage our iOS devices. Where can we create the push cert? If you're just spinning up JSS or your Jamf Pro for the first time, you can do it from there's a link right there at the dashboard. Otherwise, we could go through global management and create from there. For the first time, you'll see there won't be one there, so we'll just go ahead and click on New. And the first option then will be to download the signed CSR from Jamf Nation. It's kind of a nice little automated process that we have. Click Next, and then we'll enter in our Jamf Nation credentials that we created when we created our Jamf Nation account. Then we'll get our Jamf signed CSR. The title is all the same, so you'll see the same Jamf signed CSR from when you download it. So keep note of that. And then we'll be taken to the next part of the wizard, which is then gives us a link to the Apple Push Certificate portal. There, we will then use our Apple ID. Now, you'll probably hear the term institutional Apple ID a lot, and support will try to, recommend to customers, or your pro services recommend to customers to use an institutional Apple ID. What that just really is just you're atypical going to manage Apple IDs and creating an Apple ID. The difference here would be try to use something a little bit more generic, like support at domain.com or deploy at domain.com, something that multiple people can have access to that ID if needed. So like if you were gone when you have to renew it, or end up leaving or something like that, someone else then will have access to that when it comes to the renewal process. Once we get logged in, and then we'll have the create certificate page. Accept the terms. I'll kind of went through that fast. And then there is our upload cert section. Here is a nice little area where we can kind of make a note of what this push cert is for. So if you have multiple, let's say Jamf Pro servers, like one in production, one in dev, you can kind of note in here, this is for our production, this is for our dev server. And then we'll choose that Jamf signed CSR plist to upload. And get a nice little confirmation. Yay! Next, we'll download. And then in the wizard, you'll be taken then to the upload page. There we'll then choose, and like I said, this is also kind of similar to the Jamf signed CSR. It'll be labeled the same. It'll be mdm jamf software.pem file. So we'll choose that to upload, and we'll get it completed. A couple things to note after we click done will be the identifier for the push cert and when it expires. And I'll get to that here in a second on why that is important. The push cert is only good for a year. It'll expire in a year. Both the Jamf Pro will give you a notification in the notification section and it will send you an email if you have SMTP set up. Apple will also send an email to the whatever Apple ID that you used to let you know about the expiration. And like I said, make note of that identifier and the expiration date. Those we will use when we get into the push portal again during the renewal process. And if you click on the little I button, there will be a little info box that'll pop up. There you'll see that identifier that we can kind of verify that that's the one that we want to renew. And as you can see, our note is there about which server this is for. And the expiration date should match as well. If we use the wrong either Apple ID or we choose the wrong cert in the Apple portal, we'll get a nice little message warning us that this does not match up. This does not look good. Don't fret. Just cancel out, and that would either mean that you used, like I said, the wrong Apple ID when you're in the push portal to renew, or used or selected the wrong cert. So just go through the steps again and verify that we have the correct Apple ID, and make sure that we choose the correct certificate when we get into that push portal. Next, we'll move on to our Apache SSL certificates. Why is this needed? This helps to make a secure connection from our Mac OS devices and our iOS devices to our Jamf Pro server. That way then we will avoid that man-in-the-middle attack, so to speak, so that we're not going to an imposter server. 2 ways to create that. One is, again, if you're a new Jamf Pro customer, you'll see it there on the dashboard that we can kind of have a link right straight to it, or it'll be in System Settings, Apache Tomcat SSL settings. You'll know that you don't necessarily have a good cert right off of, especially in a new install, because you'll show up as self-signed. So that we cannot use. Devices will not trust that server. But we can fix that by clicking Edit and changing the SSL certificate used for HTTPS. Now this has changed in our latest versions of Jamf Pro. It is now the second button if we're going to use the Jamf built-in certificate authority to sign our certificate. So we'll choose the second option this time. And that is it. Complete. Next thing you have to do is just restart Tomcat. And after that, we'll be good to go. And we'll see that our Jamf, or what we ever have in our JSS URL settings will be then there in our common name, and then that'll let us know that we have our SSL certificate in place. So the next one that we kind of get common either calls on or questions about is a third-party certificate. What is the difference? Well, the difference is that a third-party certificate is signed by a certificate authority, like GoDaddy, which our Jamf Pro servers in the cloud are, DigiCert, Entrust, and then there's a few others. Why is this probably a good certificate to utilize? They're inherently trusted on devices, so you wouldn't have to install, which is installed during enrollment, our root CA certificate on devices. And for security reasons, you can then set the security setting for Mac OS to always trust our connection between the device and the JSS. How do we create one? First, we have to generate a CSR and a key store. A nice little tool that I like to utilize is we can find on DigiCert. If you have Java installed on any device, you don't have to do this from the server. You can do this from your Mac outside of the server. Put in your information, generate. It'll then output the command that we're going to then use in terminal. I would create a folder, like on the desktop, somewhere that we can kind of put all the files into. My example, JamCerts. CD into that folder or change directory to go in there, and then we would paste in our key tool command. That then will prompt you then to create or to enter in a key store password, and then generate our CSR and our JKS or our key store file that we're going to end up using later. The CSR then will send off to our certificate authority, whether it's, like I said, GoDaddy, DigiCert, to get signed. Once we get that file back, we would kind of recommend to utilize your vendor's directions when it comes to importing those certificates in there. They will give you back either 2 certs, 3 certs. It just kind of depends on what your vendor has. So you'll for sure be getting back like a root certificate, more likely like some sort of intermediate certificate, and then your web certificate. And then there will be a specific or certain order that they will recommend or have, or I shouldn't say recommend, that you'll have to follow in order to put those certificates in order so that we get the correct chain of trust for our Jamf server. In my example, I only had 2 certificates. I just used our fun little PKI tool that we have in our Jamf Pro to sign ours. So I took the root cert and I imported that into the key store. I get prompted to, yes, do I want to trust this root cert? And then import the web certificate that then was used, or that was signed by our CSR. Then to complete it, we go through the wizard on the Apache Tomcat settings, and we will then choose the first option to upload an existing SSL certificate. After that, and restarting Tomcat. After a couple different ways we can verify. One is in Safari, you can click on the little lock symbol and show the certificate, and you'll get this certificate is valid. Note kind of above the GoDaddy root certificate, there's a secure certificate authority and then the web cert. So you want to have a nice looking or chain of trust there to get that valid certificate. If anything's out of order, you'll see an error, or more likely you might not even be able to load the web page. Another tool that's handy through terminal is OpenSSL. We can use that command to connect to our Jamf Pro server. And we get there, it'll output all of the certificate paths and validations, and then at the very end, it'll give us a return code 0, OK. If we get any other code other than that, then that means that there was something wrong in how we imported those certificates. And a lot of times it's just easier sometimes just to start on over, or call support, and we might be able to help try to get either remove or import back into the right order. Okay. All right, the final topic, I know I'm kind of speeding through this, is managing our internal certificates. What and why are there internal CA certificates? The certificates are signed usually by some sort of internal certificate authority in your company or in your school, either like a Microsoft certificate authority or Symantec or Entrust. And what are those used for? Those are usually used for some sort of internal security, and oftentimes they're needed for your iOS or macOS devices to connect to your firewall or your proxy server in order to get out into the wild. We can do this 2 different ways, via a policy or a configuration profile. The policy method, the pro on that would be that we can use that for macOS computers without having APNS set up. The con would be that we need scripts to install the certificates, trust the certificate in the key chain, and also remove the certificates. We cannot use a policy, obviously, to deploy to iOS devices, and it takes more steps than using a configuration profile. How to deploy certs from a policy. First, we need to package up the certificates. So put them like in a temp location, package it up using a tool like Composer or whatever your favorite packaging tool is. and then get a script. There's some found on Jamf Nation, where then we'd have to, that will have the commands that we would need to install and trust the certificates into the keychain. And then we would create our policy. We add our certificate package to the packages payload, have our script set to run after the package installs so that it can install these certificates into our keychains. The other method is using a configuration profile. The pros on this one is the root certificates will install and automatically be trusted by using the configuration profile. And if we unscope them or when we're ready to get rid of the certificates, the profile will also remove them out of the keychain. And it's far less steps. We just go in and create our profile. The iOS profile looks exactly the same. We create our certificates profile, upload our certificates, our root cert, any intermediates that are needed in your environment, and scope it on out. There are a couple other types of certificates that you can also utilize the Jamf Pro for, AD certificates and SCEP certificates. A lot of times those are utilized for connecting to Wi-Fi networks, like 802.1x and like that. Great helpful tools when it comes to those certificates is actually the Apple's Profile Manager Help Guide. In there, they give kind of an explanation of what each field is and for. And that can kind of be helpful in either, one, in just deployment and knowing what you need, and or give your security team and be like, all right, I need this. This is the information I need in order to play this profile out. Or they can just look it over and be like, oh, this is what you need. But the Profile Manager is an excellent tool to use for a guide. All right. It's not a very heavy content topic, but for most questions, resources, Jamf Nation is a great place to start off and go, and there are many users out there that have either been in similar situations and can help. So.
Am I on? Okay, perfect. We've got some time for questions for Simon. We've got a mic stand on each side of the room, so please feel free to come up and ask some questions.
So what is the best tool, application, or terminal command to test if APNS is working from a Mac?
So push diagnostics is an excellent tool. It used to be free. I think it's a paid tool. But that one will test all the ports and to make sure that you have our connection open for Apple. Otherwise, there are telnet commands we can run. The main important one is port 5223 outbound to Apple. And when it comes to DEP now, it's going to be 443. So yeah, like I'd say push diagnostics, it tests the majority of that connection.
Gotcha. Is that in the Mac App Store, or do you have to download it from the developer site?
Developer site, 2 Canoes.
What is it again?
2 Canoes.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry, this is sort of more of a feature request than a question.
Okay.
With the built-in CA, there doesn't appear to be revocation or removal of certificates when devices are deleted or become into an unmanaged state. So for a Jamf instance that's been running for a number of years, there can be thousands of certificates that perhaps should not be there. If it's possible to clean those certificates up from the built-in CA, and then with the integrations with the third-party CAs, that when a device is deleted or falls into an unmanaged state, that there be an automated or inactive for perhaps a configurable period of time, that there be an automated revocation of that certificate for security purposes. Because you can unscope the configuration profile, the device is not active or the enrollment is damaged, that certificate, which is then potentially used for identity on the network or other purposes, is still floating around active. Thank you.
Yep. Yep.
Or if you know how to do that now.
So you're talking about like you like automatically revoke a certificate
Yeah,
out of the key store on the device, or just out of the JSS in general?
both.
Both? Right. So yeah, if you didn't use the configuration profile, yeah, probably the best automated way would be to to script it out. But like you said, if it's an unmanaged state and you can't do that, yeah, that's kind of a tricky. Then you're kind of getting in the sneaker net type of things. But I know there are some feature requests already out there and regarding revoking certificates and stuff. So that's an excellent feature request, I would say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're hoping to move to the third-party SSL cert, hopefully, in the next couple months. So my question or concern is losing management of existing devices. Is that a valid concern?
No. So I mean, if you started out using the Jamf built-in, moving to a third-party certificate is pretty smooth because it's already inherently trusted on the device.
Okay.
Like I said, GoDaddy or whatever certificate authority you're going to be using. So it's like I said, it's already inherited. So once you make that switch, the device is still going to talk to the Jamf Pro because it already knows it's going to it. It's like going to Google or whatever other website that's out there, or even like it's Jamf Pro, whatever. It's already that root certificate's already trusted, so you should be good to go.
Awesome, thank you.
At the keynote this morning, there was mention of SCEP services being rolled into the JSS directly rather than just controlling an external SCEP server. I was wondering if you could maybe speak more to that and what that feature would look like.
Sure. So yeah, in Jamf 10, actually I think they started it in 101, and that's more to do, there is a little bit more automated ways to kind of integrate with the SCEP server. Yeah, I haven't tested a lot with it quite yet. I'm not sure if there's actually a session on that at all or not, but it is something I know that has now worked in the product that a lot of people have been asking for. Yeah, I'm not sure what specifics you're kind of looking for, I guess.
DEP initiated 802.1x would be the clear goal, but...
Okay. Yeah, that one I'll have to kind of maybe look into a little bit more off stage and maybe give you a little bit better answer. Yes.
I don't know what that gentleman was looking for specifically with the built-in SCEP services, and in fact I didn't realize that Jamf was bringing that in. But I guess some of the nicer things would be to define how the SCEP request is sent, as in if you could manually input what appears in the subject field. I leverage the Microsoft implementation of SCEP, just the NDES stuff, and I find it limiting in that I have to stand up multiple instances of NDES if I want to fully take advantage of how the SCEP request can go through. My question that I had for you was in regards to the use of, or the appearance of anchor certificates that show up in pre-stage enrollment. I've never really used that or understood what it's about. I assume it's to do with placing trust down during a DEP enrollment. Is that right?
Yeah, so the trust certificate or the anchor certificate during that DEP process is if you're using the Jamf built-in one. Because by default, our certificate authority is not trusted on devices. So then that anchor certificate goes down during that DEP process.
So how does that happen if the trust isn't pre-provisioned? Is it not using the APNS mechanisms to do that?
It's using more of the APNS side of things. So, because it's bundled inside that MDM profile that comes down during the DEP enrollment side. So the device initiates with Apple, verifies it's part of the MDM program or part of the pre-stage. Then the device then talks to the JSS and downloads that MDM profile.
Yeah.
Pretty much Apple's telling that device, trust going to this server to get this profile. That profile comes down, installs that anchor certificate into the keychain, and then...
Okay, so it's all about pre-positioning trust on there during DEP. Okay.
Yep, exactly. And if you're using a third-party cert, then that option is not necessary.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool, thank you. And I agree about that certificate life cycle management piece that someone else mentioned as well. It would be really useful if we could take care of all of the orphan certs that have been minted by the internal CA. Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
This might be a really simple question, so sorry if it is. But we are in a clustered environment, and we're using the same third-party cert for both of them. Any potential issues with that?
So you have two Tomcats?
Correct.
Okay, no load balancer in place?
One, it's essentially scoped by network segments. One is on AWS for people not in the network, and one is internal.
Internal. Right. Yeah, so you'll need to install the certificate on both of them.
Right.
And yeah, that shouldn't affect,
Okay.
the communication with devices.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, well, thanks, Simon. I don't think there's any other questions in the room, so we'll end a few minutes early. This is the last session here for today. Hope to see you back. We've got 4 sessions tomorrow. And otherwise, any other questions that you think of in the next couple minutes, Simon will be around for a little bit, or you can get them answered in the expo hall. Thanks.